Hey BookTube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March. This is my bookish week for Saturday, July 24th. And it's like another one of those slow weeks. I did finish one book, but I can't really say anything much about it because I'm still discussing it with my buddy readers. So I finished Emma by Jane Austen in honor of Jane Austen July. And I'm buddy reading this with Courtney Ferreter and Misa from Books and Sushi. And our last check-in is next week on Wednesday. So I actually finished the book, but I'm not gonna give you my thoughts on it quite yet until I give my first thoughts to my co-buddy readers. So yeah, finished Emma. That's it. That's about it. So my BookTube prize reading is all done. I don't have to be vague about that anymore. So I have no material, no content for this week's video. What I thought I would do is do a tag that I've had in my Watch Later file for months. I was tagged last year by Hannah at Hannah's Books, and she tagged me in the New York Times by the book tag. And it's been sitting in my Watch Later. Hannah, I'm sorry it took so long. But I really like these questions, so I thought I'm gonna do the tag within my Bookish Week video. Kid in the background. So let me do the New York Times by the book tag. Let's see, prompt number 1, what book is on your nightstand now? I have 5, and one of them is on my Kindle, but I am still reading George Eliot's The Mill on the Floss. I will have this done probably later this weekend. Excuse me, and our last check-in is a week from Saturday the 24th, so it is the 31st. But I thought the last quarter of this book would be slow, but I'm flying through it. I don't want to say anything more, but I'm still reading The Mill on the Floss. Look what I got. I got Britta Bolt's first novel in the Peter Posthumous series. This is Lonely Graves. Now, Britta Bolt is a conspiracy between Britta Bowler and Rodney Bolt. They write the series of crime fiction, detective fiction, and I received this from the wonderful Britta Bowler last week. So I started reading it right away. I was so excited to do it, and I'm flying through this one. I'm about almost a third of the way done. This is Peter Posthumous, who works for a department in Amsterdam that helps with funerals for unclaimed people, unclaimed bodies. And he's also a kind of an amateur detective where he's trying to track down family members and people that would be willing to take on the funeral arrangements and the costs for these unclaimed people. So he also works with the authorities and the police in the city. And there's some crossover and there's some mystery aspect and sleuthing. So I've got that on my nightstand. I also started the short stories by Latin American women, The Magic and the Real. This is edited by Celia Correras de Zapata, and it's forwarded by Isabel Allende. This is a short story collection from Latin American women that has a lot with magical realism and mythology, mythological themes, and it's quite extensive for a slim book. There are a few dozen Latin American women authors in here, and I've read a couple stories so far. I'll probably read a couple, maybe one every night, or half a dozen in the week, but so far I really enjoy these, so that's been really great. And I think the majority of them are translated stories, so that will apply for Women in Translation for August. I also have The Illumination of Ursula Flight by Anna Marie Crowhurst. I finally started reading this, and in my last, here I go, I'm gonna forget. I showed you this book in one of my last videos, and I don't remember which one it was, but this was in Britta's birthday video because I bought this book based on her recommendation and review. And so we were chatting and she said, start with this one, because I asked her which one of the books that she recommended would she tell me to start first, and she said, start with Ursula Flight. So I started with that one. Really happy about it too. And I've also got The Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe on my Kindle, which I am reading for the Critical Chicks book group. And that is the nonfiction story of the Sackler family, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, and the advent of the opium addiction crisis that went on for decades. So I'm into that. I'm about 10 to 12% done with that book. And that's basically what's on my nightstand. All right, prompt number 2. What was the last truly great book you've read? One of them I can't say because it was a BookTube prize book. You'll find out soon enough. But the other one, I've fortunately had several. I might be closing in on a dozen 5-star books so far this year. But besides the book I finished recently, the other great book out of the 5-star books that I've read so far is George Eliot's Adam Bede. And quite often, I've said this before, I'd like to eliminate the George Eliot books because in my mind, in my heart, there aren't many books that rival George Eliot in style and mastery of the English language and plot and story. So there's a secret book, and then there's Adam Bede by George Eliot. Number 3, if you could meet any writer, dead or alive, who would it be, and what would you want to know? George Eliot, and I'd like to ask her, were you actually a secret feminist? Because much of her biography and even some of her narrative in her novels says otherwise or speaks otherwise. Many of her novels deal with the status of women and women's lot in life. Adam Bede has a very strong female character who is a Methodist minister, but there is a development in that storyline that leads the reader to believe that maybe that really wasn't a feminist trail. So that's what I'd like to talk to her about. And I'd love to know more about her relationship with George Lewes. Number 4, what books might we be surprised to find on your shelves? I think I've said this before, but I still have the entire Twilight series on my shelf. This is the first one out of the 4. Yeah, they're still there. I don't feel any burning need to get rid of them. They were fun at the time. I enjoyed reading them, but they're still on my shelf. Number 5, how do you organize your personal library? I don't. It's only recently, I'm in my dining room, and these are my bookcases behind me in my dining room. And this is nonfiction, and I have a shelf of classics over that way, over this way. And I just recently separated my nonfiction and my fiction. Most of these books were in my living room over there. And when I got these bookshelves a few months ago, that's when I did a pretty massive reorganization. Other than that, they're not organized. I don't alphabetize. I don't put genre and genre together. The only thing I try to do is I try to put all of an author's books together. And I know exactly where everything is in my house on which shelf most of the time, even though it's in complete chaos. Let's see, number 6, what book have you always meant to read and haven't gotten around to yet? Is there anything you feel embarrassed never to have read? I'm not embarrassed by anything I haven't read. It's a pointless emotion to be embarrassed by something that you feel you should read. It doesn't matter. And if you're embarrassed by that, you're listening to a really poorly constructed and negative message in your head that you should have read something by this point in your life. There's plenty I haven't read, and I have no embarrassment whatsoever. But there is a book, and it's kind of a series of books that I've meant to read that I've had forever, and I think one of the reasons I've been avoiding is I'm afraid I'm not going to like it, but it's Marilynne Robinson's Gilead. And this is the first, there's now a quartet, and this is the first out of the quartet. And I've had this forever. I'm not sure. I feel like this is such a booktube and literature darling that I'm afraid if I read it, I'm not going to enjoy it. I read Housekeeping from her, and it was very good. I didn't love it, but it was good. So we'll see. I would love to get to this by the end of the year. Let's see, number 7, disappointing, overrated, just not good. What book did you feel you were supposed to like but didn't? Do you remember the last book you put down without finishing? What was I supposed to like but didn't? I finished this. This is not a DNF, but I did finish it. And I stopped at Wolf Hall. I was doing a read-along of the trilogy, Bring Up the Bodies and The Mirror and the Light. And after finishing this book, I said, no, I don't want to devote any more time to that series. And I think it's polarizing. It's people absolutely insanely love it, or it's just too much. It's too boring, it's too dense, it's too whatever. I didn't think it was boring, but I just did not enjoy it. There was too many people, too many names, too many characters named Thomas. I felt it was kind of, the way she wrote it was a little stuffy and fake. You can blast me. Go ahead and give me the thumbs down. I don't care. But I didn't love it, so I didn't continue with the trilogy. And other books I thought I was supposed to like, anything written by Ann Tyler. I read a couple of her books. I didn't really get along with either. I started to read Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant for the Barter Horde's Backlist Book Club and DNF'd it. Just did not like it. I don't like her writing style, and I think it's very easy to expect that you're going to like anything she writes. I didn't. What's my last DNF? This one, Ocean Sea by Alessandro Barrico. I don't know, but it sucked, so I DNF'd it. This is translated from the Italian by, let me get the translator's name, if I can find it, Alistair McEwen. This was miserable to read. It made no sense. There was some weird magical realism stuff going on. With magical realism in general is good, but not with this book. This was just awful, awful story. Let's see. Number 8, what kind of stories are you drawn to, and are there any you stay clear of? I can't pinpoint anything that I'm particularly drawn to. I read across a lot of different genres, and I don't think there's anything that I'm particularly drawn to. I have authors that I'm particularly drawn to. I'm loving the classics lately. I'm loving George Eliot. I'm loving Jane Austen. I think I'm very much drawn to the style of writing that I'm finding in classics, whatever era they come from. So maybe that's something I'm particularly drawn to these days. If there's anything I stay clear of, I don't like horror. I don't like the gory stuff. I steer clear of horror novels. I've read a few over the years, and I just don't enjoy them. And I've picked one up here and there, and there have been some that have been more well constructed than others, and those have been okay. But I just don't like to submit myself to that type of story and that type of writing, so I tend to avoid that. Oh, let's see. Number 9. Oh, this is funny. If you could require the president to read one book, what would it be? If I had done this tag last year, this answer would be very different. But one of the books that I haven't read this book, but I want to, and I would love for Biden to read this book. The College Dilemma, The Lies We Tell Our Children and the Truth We Hide by Brooks R. Feisinger. I think it's a really good idea in the U.S., in the United States, to start to talk to kids about their what they want to be when they grow up, and to talk to them about college and the cost and the danger of debt and all of that. There is no longer a guarantee that you will achieve the American dream simply because you have a college education. And college has exorbitantly risen in cost so insanely high that we need to start having that talk with our children. I live in New Hampshire, and the University of New Hampshire is the most expensive state university in the country of the United States. Several years ago, they bought a table that I believe they installed in the cafeteria, or it was in a conference room somewhere. The table was $16,000. And also several years ago, my husband worked on a project on the campus as an electrician when they installed a massive, brand new underground outdoor pool. The things that the campus were paying for, the renovations, the advancements they were making on the campus were so exorbitant in price, it's no wonder that it's one of the most expensive state schools, if not the, I think it's the most expensive state school in the country. So let's have Biden read that book. Number 10, what do you plan to read next? Well, I am going to be buddy reading Disoriental with Britta Bowler and Nagar Javadi's Disoriental. And this is translated from the French by Tina Cover. I just recently hauled this from my used book superstore haul, and Britta said, then I'm not the last one who hasn't read Disoriental, so we decided let's do it together. So we're going to be reading this the first couple of weeks in August. In the last couple of weeks in August, I'm reading Piranesi, I don't know which one, by Susanna Clark with Freddie from Sluggish Reader. So those are the books that I have penned in on my calendar. Along with the things that I already have on my nightstand, that's what's coming up. That's what I'm planning to read next. So that is the New York Times by the book tag. Thank you, Hannah, very much for tagging me. And I apologize for the delay, but that was my bookish week because I had very little going on. I've been reading every single day and reading a lot, but I'm not finishing anything. I'll probably finish 7 books all at once in the same week, and that'll be a weird bookish week for you guys. But that's it for me. Let me know in the comments below if you have any input, any thoughts over what I just said, any of the books I showed you. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.